Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. And taking a look at Utah's schedule, this is going to be their first year in the Big 12, and honestly, even though the competition may be a little bit tougher than it has been in the Pac-12, except for last year, Utah doesn't really have that difficult of a schedule. Just started off, Southern Utah, don't really need to talk about that much. Baylor, they've been kind of on and off. Definitely a very difficult team to predict, but since the game's at home, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Road trip to Utah State, another non-conference game, in-state game, but it's still not going to be that tough. The two trickiest games, I think, come here at the end of September with a road trip to Oklahoma State, who I think is probably going to be the biggest challenger to Utah as far as making the Big 12 championship goes. And then another potential challenger in Arizona who brings back Noah Fafita and Teteroa McMillan. They're going to be a pretty tough team to beat. However, Utah does have home field advantage in that one, so that'll be an interesting one to watch. They get a bye week to recover after that difficult two-game stretch there before, honestly, not that difficult of a stretch against Arizona State on the road, a home match against TCU, and then another road trip to Houston. Another bye week, BYU, they'll probably be good, but not quite good enough, I don't think, to win on the road at Utah. A road trip to Colorado, who I think is overhyped like they were last year. They'll be better, but they won't be a playoff team and they won't win the Big 12. And then you have a home game against Iowa State and finishing out the season with another new addition to the Big 12 in UCF. That game could potentially trip them up, but I think if that point Utah's having a really good season, they'll probably take care of business and try and lock in their spot in the Big 12 championship. All in all, they have 6 home games and 6 away games, with only 2 of those games being against top 25 opponents in Oklahoma State and Arizona, and this gives them an overall schedule difficulty of 4.5 out of 10. We have 3 guaranteed wins for the Utes, and 2 of those are their non-conference games with Southern Utah and that road trip to Utah State. And then we have the November 23rd matchup against Iowa State. I don't really see Utah losing any of these games. I think they're just simply too talented. Even though that game against Utah State's on the road, I don't think that Utah State's quite good enough to win that, even though they're at home. Utah is bringing back a very experienced quarterback, albeit him coming off of an injury for the whole season last year. I still think that Utah is just going to be a little bit too good and too experienced to lose to any of these teams. We have quite a few likely wins for Utah here, and kind of just to generalize all of this, these are going to mainly be the teams that are either average to above average Big 12 teams that Utah plays at home, or more in that average range where they have to go on the road. These basically are the games that I'm pretty confident in Utah winning. However, they do have upset potential, and it wouldn't be overly shocking if they did drop one of these 7 games. Now, they started off with that home game against Baylor and then a road trip to Arizona State. These ones, I wouldn't be completely shocked if Utah lost, especially that Arizona State one. That game starts at 10:30 Eastern Time, so it's kind of some Pac-12 after dark, but in the Big 12, that one might be one you want to stay up and watch, especially if Utah is doing pretty well this season. That could be a potentially big upset game. The week after that, they play TCU at home, and then that's followed by a road trip to Houston. I would also want to watch out for this Houston game on the road. I don't think Houston is necessarily a great team, but I think they might be just good enough that they could potentially pull off an upset win at home. Then we have BYU, which is a home game for Utah, and then the super hyped Colorado Buffaloes. I wouldn't be completely shocked if Colorado got the win, but it's going to very much depend on how their season has been going. I can definitely see Colorado having a very similar season to last year where they don't quite make a bowl game. In that case, they're not going to beat Utah. this would have to be it would have to be a pretty big upset. I think Utah will probably be ranked somewhere in the top 15 by the time this game happens. So don't expect much from Colorado, but there is upset potential, which is why we had to put it on the likely wins. And then finally, we have Utah's last game of the year, which is at Central Florida. And I don't think UCF is probably good enough to win this game. However, it's the last game of the year. You never know what can happen. It's a Friday night, late at night. Utah's probably going to be making a push to get into the Big 12 championship game if they haven't already locked up their spot. This one could potentially trip them up, but I don't think it's likely. We have two toss-ups on the schedule for Utah this year, and these are those back-to-back games that I mentioned earlier in the schedule preview. The first one is that road trip to Oklahoma State, and I think this is probably the most important game on Utah's schedule this year. It's going to be early in the season. As of right now, Utah is slight favorites. Personally, I think Oklahoma State's going to have the edge, even though Utah has an experienced quarterback in Cam Rising. I think Oklahoma State, with the home field advantage, and to be honest, they have a pretty good team themselves. I think they're a little bit underrated. So I would take Oklahoma State right now. And then we have that home game against Arizona is the second one, just the week after the Oklahoma State game. Arizona is a very talented team. They have a lot of firepower on offense. However, they are lacking in depth. So I think Utah's going to be the favorite here, especially at home. But if this game becomes a shootout, definitely watch out for Arizona to win it. Taking a look at the schedule recap, I think Utah is going to start out the season 3-0 with those games against Southern Utah, Baylor, and Utah State before dropping a really close game on the road to Oklahoma State. I think the Cowboys have just enough to get that win, given mainly the home field advantage. Even though Utah might be slightly more experienced, I think Oklahoma State will have enough to get it done, and it will probably be due to their offense and just being able to outscore Utah for just long enough. Now, I think the next week that Utah will bounce back with a home win over a pretty good Arizona team. Like I was saying, Arizona is lacking a little bit in depth, and I don't think they're going to be able to hang with Utah quite the entire game. Utah will probably pull away in the fourth quarter. It'll be a close one, but I think the Utes are able to rebound from the Oklahoma State loss with a win. Now, into the bye week, they have a pretty easy schedule after that. I think they'll win those next three pretty easily. There's slight upset potential, but I wouldn't worry too much if I were a Utah fan. And then we have one more bye week on November 2nd before those final four games. The Colorado one is one to watch out for, but I don't think Colorado is quite talented enough to pull it off, even with the home field advantage. So we have Utah finishing at 11-1. Adding up all of the percentages, we get a projected record of 10.05 and 1.95, so almost two losses. It is definitely possible that they drop another game somewhere. However, I think 11-1 is the most likely scenario. Now, FPI has them at 7.8 and 4.2. I don't really see four losses for Utah. I think this is what we're going to end up with most likely. If they drop a second one, it'll probably be to Arizona. And then finally, their chances to make the playoffs are sitting at 12.5%. I think it should be a little bit higher. Given this schedule, they have a very good chance of making the Big 12 championship, and all they would have to do is win that game to be in. National championship is sitting at 0.2%, and kind of the same with the playoff appearance. This one's based off of the playoff appearance, so it should be a little bit higher. I don't think Utah really has the team to win a national championship, but at the same time, if they make the playoffs, they obviously have a shot, just not a very good one. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe for our daily prediction videos, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.